Hello DevOps people, I'm back. My name is Jochen. Welcome to my DevOps stream. I'm sorry for bailing on you last Thursday, but I just wasn't up to it at the day. And I hope you haven't missed me too much. So let's get started. As always, if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, if you have any suggestions, then simply pop into the chat and let's talk. Today I'd like to tackle something new, and that is get a Gitlab setup done. And I'd like to do this on our Kontena platform, just to get to gain a bit more experience with it. I'm pretty sure most of you know what Gitlab is, because it's been around for quite some time now. It is basically an open source equivalent to GitHub, so a software that allows you to maintain and manage Git repositories, to do all the kinds of workflows that development teams do with their Git repositories. And it also has a continuous integration system built in that allows you to basically attach workflows to your Git repository. So when you update your repository, automatic processes will kick in and maybe start testing your software, giving you feedback if your recent changes are valid or not. And I'm pretty curious how that works. And as I mentioned, I'm going to run this on Kontena. Now, Kontena might be much less well known than GitLab. It is basically a Docker orchestration platform. And in that sense, it is an alternative to things like Kubernetes, for example. So far, we have a small GitLab container platform running on our own. Just got confused there for a while. So I'll just switch over to my desktop here. So our platform has 3 small nodes running on DigitalOcean at the moment. And I can use this platform to basically spin up Docker containers and link them together as I see fit. And today I'm going to launch a new Kontena stack, which is basically a set of Docker containers. Well, looking at the GitLab documentation, it actually will be a single Docker container, because the Docker image that GitLab provides is just a single container which contains everything that GitLab needs to run. But for example, if I need to add a container that does data backup or other stuff, I can add these containers to the Kontena stack. Fortunately, Kontena stacks build more or less on what Docker Compose does on a local development machine. So going from the example configuration that GitLab provides us for Docker Compose, with that example configuration, I guess I can get started very quickly. All right. Oh, sorry, I just botched that. I should have switched like this. Well, I need to get acquainted with my recording software a bit more. Okay, so once again, here's our Kontena platform with 3 nodes, ops 01, 02, and 03. Just small nodes because we don't have much workload on them at the moment. And the Gitlab setup for Docker Compose looks like that, and the setup for Kontena will look pretty similar. Okay, let's get started. I'm already in our Kontena stacks repository, but I'll have to switch back to the master branch. And from here I'll go into the ops directory because that's the Kontena platform, and from here I'll create a directory named Gitlab, and I'll also launch a new branch named Gitlab. And the main thing I'll need to run Gitlab is a Kontena YAML file. And I'll go ahead and just copy what Gitlab has as a example configuration for Docker Compose, and for Kontena I just have to nest this below the top level key services. Oops, I should have used paste mode here. Nope. Come on. There we go. And this needs to be indented. There isn't a restart statement in Kontena, and the host name will be configured differently, and I'll get back to that in a minute. The external URL I'd like to use here will be gitlab.ops.f7it.net. I won't have to expose many ports except the SSH one maybe, but I'll do that later, because external connectivity will mainly be provided by a load balancer we have already running. And then I need the Docker volumes to store the actual data, so the Git files and configuration and all that stuff. And for that I'll add 3 external volumes. Now let's look up how Kontena works with volumes. Docker volumes basically are storage spaces outside of a container, which makes sense to not have them live and die with the service container itself. Kontena allows you to create volumes that you then can attach to certain containers. You create them using the command line tool, Kontena volume create, then you provide a driver, which by default is the local driver that does nothing fancy. It just creates a volume on one of the nodes. You will give it a volume name, of course, and the main thing you need to decide is the scope of this volume. It's basically it determines which containers will be able to see and use this volume. You can create volumes on an instance level, which means each service gets its own volume, and they say this is suitable for services where each instance should have their own data, and a possible data replication, if there is any, happens at the application layer. So each volume is completely separate from the other volumes, and the application itself has to make sure that if you have multiple instances of a service, that they synchronize their data in some way. Then there is the stack scope, which means that services in a container stack, which I basically am going to define here, will see and be able to use this volume. And then you have the grid scope, which means the whole platform. So all stacks running on this platform will be able to see and use this volume. In this case, the stack scope seems the best. It means that all Kontena services in this stack, in this Gitlab stack, will be able to use this volume, and if we have multiple instances, we need to use a volume driver that is able to do data replication. Since I don't have any driver at the moment that does data replication, I simply am limited to running only one instance of the service, but in order to get started, that's more than enough. Well, it is exactly enough. So, we need 3 volumes here, and you can see them here. So there is the configuration volume, the logs volume, and the most important one, which is the data volume, where all the Git files will be stored. And I'll simply go ahead and create a few volumes for that. So I need a shell, and now let's go ahead. We'll always use the local driver because that's the only one that's available at the moment. We'll use the stack scope, and I'll name the first GitLab config. Oh, so maybe I need to log in first. Can I see a node list? No. Okay. Connection refused is not the best error message in this context, because it doesn't mean I can't authenticate. It means I can't even connect to our platform, which I should be able to do. Well, this is... well, we are off to a good start, I guess, huh? Okay, I'll try and do a login, and bear with me while I'll switch you to my secret screen for a while, just to be sure I don't expose any login credentials. You should still be able to hear me. I've fixed the microphone problem from last time. So let me see if I can log in. Browser-based authentication here. Just give me a second. Still get connection refused. screen here, and I'll try and see what the problem is. So, what can I do here? So let's try and switch to the platform we have. Container cloud platform use. That looks much better. Okay, I just had to point it to the right platform. Okay, that's that. Let's get back to creating volumes then. Gitlab config, we'll need Gitlab logs, and we'll need Gitlab data. Creating them on the stack level means, for example, that I can launch multiple Gitlab stacks next to each other, and each of these stacks will get their own volume sets, so we don't have any dangerous overlap there that one instance would, so one stack would write into another stack's storage. And now I should be able to use these volumes by referencing them in my stack file. Let's look up the documentation for this. Here, volumes, and I'll simply define them with a name that I can reference, and then I'll define which volume I'm going to use. So this should look like volumes. My reference, well, I'll basically use the same names. Gitlab date, so let's start with config again. Gitlab config is an external volume named Gitlab config. Then we'll have Gitlab logs, which is external named Gitlab logs. And Gitlab data. Okay, now I can use these names, these volume names, simply by using them on the left side of my volume definition. So I go back here and say Gitlab config. This is Gitlab logs. And this is Gitlab data. And I let them appear at the same places that Gitlab wants me to. That is that. So far it's been very easy because Gitlab has done all the work for us by providing us with this container that contains everything that we need. So this container is full of Ruby code and database stuff, and I don't actually know what Gitlab uses, what services it uses internally, but I don't have to care anyway. So that's convenient. The only thing that I now need to configure is the load balancer integration, and that's easy as well. So we already have a working load balancer running on our Kontena platform, and I just have to link this service here and just by referencing its name, the stack is ingress LB and the service itself is just named LB. By linking these two containers, the load balancer container can inspect the environment variables used by my Gitlab container here. Oops. And so I can add the necessary environment variables to use this. And yeah, okay, indenting won't be much of a problem. And I'll tell the load balancer that this container is supposed to be accessed under the name gitlab.ops.f7it.net. And since the subdomain ops.f7it.net is a wildcard domain entry that points to our Kontena platform, this should work pretty much out of the box. So let's see and try how this works. Kontena stack install. Let's just look up how stacks actually are installed. I'll just say Kontena stack install. Oh, I need a few more information in my stack file though. So let's go back to the editor. Right at the start of my configuration file, I need to name this, and I'll just name it flysteel/gitlab. I'll give it a version. Let's start with 0.1.0 and a description. Gitlab. Okay. With that, I should be able to launch this. It automatically starts deployment of the only container we have defined. The first start always takes a bit longer because the Docker image needs to be downloaded. Okay, that looked okay. Let's take a look at our service list. The GitLab web service is running. So we might be able to access it already. Nope, service unavailable. So something's not quite right yet. Okay. It might be still in setup mode because I imagine that Gitlab will have to run some database setup first and things like that, which you might be able to see in the logs. Yep. Oops. They actually run a chef server in there, or at least a chef client, to set everything up. That's interesting. That's actually very interesting. So if you have a Docker image that actually needs to do some complex setup, instead of just running a single service as Docker is normally suggested to be used, you can simply ship it with a chef client and run that at the start of the container. And it takes care of everything from there. Interesting. Hey Parset07, happy to have you on the stream. Welcome. Yeah, you're right. This is so much slower and inefficient. That's definitely the case. So there is a reason why it's common usage that you just launch a single service inside a container, and if you have a set of containers, you use something like the Kontena stacks that I'm using. But since GitLab ships everything as they call it, omnibus container, my stack here is very simple, even trivial, because it actually only has a single service, which is not much of a stack. And you're right, the whole point of containers is to be already set up, maybe with slight possibilities to configure the container via environment variables or something like that. But I guess shipping a whole application stack like GitLab with a web application with a database, they probably use Postgres, I guess, and with a web server, I saw Nginx mentioned in this log. I guess you need something like this to set it up. But I'm pretty sure they have at least a mention that you can set up a GitLab the usual way by running a database container and running a container with the GitLab application and linking them and all that stuff that is necessary. And Sometime in the future we might even have to go that way to have a more performant database or something like that. So we have to pick it apart and run them as separate containers, and using Kontena, that won't be much trouble, I guess. But since this is the first time I'm actually launching Gitlab on my own, it is pretty convenient. Sorry. The log doesn't seem to be continuing, even though there is no final message from Chef. Let's simply see if the application is available. No, it's not. So as you can see, I can reach my load balancer from this URL, but the load balancer doesn't have any upstream to talk to, and that's why I get a 503. I'm not sure exactly what is happening now. It even seems to be running Prometheus internally for some kind of monitoring. I'm pretty sure this is a very, very complex container. It's basically a Linux VM running a lot of services. Not quite as Docker containers are supposed to look like. Nothing is happening. So the last thing was at 3 o'clock UTC. It is still running, but seems to be stalled somewhere. I'm not 100% sure I can use the syntax here for the GitLab omnibus config environment variable. So just to be sure, I'll look that up. On the other hand, that's YAML syntax, isn't it? So it's not Kontena specific or Docker specific. Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Well, well, well. That's the downside of that. I don't exactly know what is happening at the moment, if at all, and I don't quite know how to deal with this. Yeah, it's pretty strange syntax. On the other hand, yeah, if you need to construct very long values for an environment variable, it probably makes sense to be able to split it up into multiple lines. But yeah, it confused me for a while. Yeah, I'm really not sure. So it worked for quite a while, and then well, at least I should be able to connect to the container and get a login there. So let me see. Container service show. No, the service is gitlab/web. Oh yeah, there's the environment variable. That seems to be working, and I have my load balancer set up. Is the actual name of the variable Kontena lb virtual host, just to make sure that that's the case, or did I remember that wrong? See, it's virtual hosts with an S. And what's the syntax for that? It's just comma separated, right? Yeah. Okay, so it might be just that I got that wrong. With that changed, I can simply run container stack upgrade. Let's see, Gitlab. That's the name of the stack. It should be. Or isn't it? It's just Gitlab. Okay. Since I've changed the name of the environment variable, the service, aka container web, needs to be redeployed. Yeah, I should be able to log into the container to see what's up. I won't be able to access Prometheus because I haven't exposed any of its ports to the public. But yeah, I guess I should log into the container first anyway to see if everything is running or if there are any logs that I can inspect to see what the issue is. Now let's see. Let's wait for it to be redeployed. Another thing I should add to the setup is that web actually is a stateful container because it needs local storage. Because just was a reminder of that because this deployment takes a while again, and that might be a sign that it got redeployed on another node where the Docker image had to be pulled again. But we'll see. So we can see that here. Previously it was scheduled to Kontena ops 02, and if I run this a second time, we'll see it's still scheduled to Kontena ops 02. Okay, let's take a look at the logs again. This time Chef didn't have to do a lot, and the node exporter is again the last message I get here. It might have the same issue, or it might just be the last output of this. Now that my load balancer setup is correct, I should be able to see if things are running, but they aren't, obviously. I still get a 503. Okay. So. Let's just check that I got these volumes right. Stack files, volumes. Yeah, just volume name, colon, and then the mount path. Oh, I could have been able just to say external to, and that way I don't have to duplicate the name since it's identical anyway. That's a bit nicer. Nope. Node exporter. Let's do a quick search. Gitlab, Docker, node exporter. If there is a common issue. Seems to be part of Prometheus. Thanks, Markers, for watching. See you later. Okay, so I need to find a way to get into this container. I think that's via the Kontena container command. Gitlab web bash. Nope. Of course I need to exec. And I think I need to address the container ID at that point, which... Well, let's keep this log running here. Container service show gitlab/web, and I think this gitlab.web-1 is the container name. Nope. Let's take a look at documentation here. No obvious place where to look for documentation, so let's resort to the CLI again. Kontena container. Exec. Okay, exec. I probably need IT to have an interactive terminal. Exec, then a container ID, which I guess is gitlab.web-1, and then the command. Nope. list my containers here. Okay. The syntax is different than I expected. I need to have the node in there as well. Here we go. Even though the whole stack is running on an overlay network which is encrypted and would require me to use a VPN to use conventional tools, the Kontena CLI, which is already logged into this platform, provides me with an easy way to get into this thing. Ooh, there's not much that's running in there at the moment. Do we have the mounts that I would expect to be here? Oh well, they will probably be from the outside, won't they? So, just to be sure, we have var log gitlab. Okay, no. Maybe let's take a look at this node exporter. Okay, they're using supervisor D to run everything. Which seems to be working. But then again, that's a pretty short process list here. What's that wrapper here? I have to admit, this is pretty opaque. I'm tempted to redeploy everything and give it another try. You are right, but that there are quite a few logs, but I'm not sure what I can get from them. No. The main thing is these are all the services that GitLab uses, but there is no overarching thing like setup for a directory or something that would tell me if the setup has finished successfully or not. So I guess I'll simply tear down this installation and let it deploy again, and then I can take a look at the log again. Maybe it was just a one-time glitch. If not, a bit more debugging will be necessary. So, Kontena stack rm gitlab. Okay. No GitLab stack anymore. So there shouldn't be any service running under GitLab. Yep, there's no service running GitLab anymore. And now let's try Kontena stack install again. Container seems to be still being launched. No logs. Strange. Let's see, is there Gitlab web is running. But no logs. This is getting stranger by the minute. Yeah. Me neither. I didn't expect that either. I would have expected the same issue again, the log running through until it reaches node exporter, but getting complete radio silence is pretty much the worst case here. Crap. Why though? Gitlab web stateful and running one instance, so I'll probably be able to even run this here. Yep. Still only the wrapper that is running, but doesn't seem to be pretty much alive. To be honest, I expected this to be much easier. Well, to be honest, I just saw that I made another slight copy and paste error by telling Gitlab that it's using SSL, which it certainly isn't at the moment. You are right, there aren't any exposed ports at the moment because I don't actually need to. I get the Kontena load balancer, use the container's internal port 80, and the load balancer does the basic exposing by proxying it through. Yeah, I don't expose, for example, the SSH port because I can access everything using the container CLI. So it shouldn't be necessary to expose anything. So yeah, maybe I can at least get into this a bit more, so to explain things. As you saw, there are a few services running here, and one of them is this ingress load balancer, which is an image provided by Kontena, which runs a HA proxy instance, and that HA proxy instance is connected directly to the etcd database that is used for managing the whole platform. So as soon as a container starts up, it gets registered with this etcd database. I call it database just for simplicity's sake. It's more of a key value store and things. Slayer Darth, welcome, welcome, happy to have you here. Even though things aren't progressing as I like at the moment, but we'll see. So this AJ proxy instance automatically notices, or it gets notified when new containers start up, and it is able to take a look at the environment variables. And if a container has these environment variables starting with Kontena underscore LB, it basically gets into action. And at this part here, I tell the load balancer, well, I'd like to be able to access this container via HTTP. This application has or answers on its internal port 80, and I'd like to be able to access the Kontena load balancer with this host name, and then the load balancer knows, okay, now I'll need to proxy this through to the container gitlab/web, and that way I should be able to talk to this instance. And this all is made possible by linking these two containers, so that's why I have the ingress lb/lb as a container link configured here. Okay, since HTTPS was definitely the wrong thing, I'll run a stack upgrade. Let's see if I can get any more logs. My command session was closed, which was to be expected, but still not much of activity here. So let's get back to Slayer, who deployed their gem to Ruby gems this weekend. So util info is your new gem. Haven't you just started using Ruby and all that stuff? How is it you can just launch gems willy-nilly? And first of all, what does this gem? What does it do? Okay. Hmm. I'm not happy. Troubleshooting. If you're using file ACLs on the Docker host, not sure if Kontena nodes are set up with ACLs. By the way, are you sure that this image works as expected on the Docker? Well, yeah, I'm not, but I'm simply following the original GitLab documentation here. I haven't run it under Docker Compose as it's used to be here. and I simply assumed that I'd be able to convert this into a Kontena setup. And even if I would be able to get this running on my Linux server here or on my local Mac here, it wouldn't help me much, because I just know that it works on my machine. And it would still not help me run this. However, I just saw there is... No. If I'd be running this on Docker Cloud, I'd simply use the Docker Compose config here. I do. I just took the volumes from this example setup here and modified them that they don't point to host-based directories, but to Kontena volumes. And there should be 3 of them here. And I should be using them as well. So if I do Gitlab web, I get all the details about this service, and this container runs, yeah. So it basically has a single instance, Gitlab web -1 or /1, running on my node 2. And it's using these 3 volumes here. Gitlab config, which is mapped to /gitlab, Gitlab logs, which is mapped to var log gitlab, and Gitlab data, which is mapped to var opt gitlab. What baffles me the most is that I simply don't get any log output anymore. That's very strange. It does have the new external URL. To be honest, at the moment I'm a bit stumped. I could try and not only tear down the stack, which is the container, but also the volumes. Maybe they contain stuff that is now in the way. We could take a look at these volumes, though, just for shits and giggles. So /gitlab is a thing. Okay, and there is a Gitlab configuration file, which should be the default configuration file, except that the thing that I passed in via environment variable, the external URL, might be replaced, but I think that happens elsewhere, so it doesn't have any external URL defined in here, and it'll probably use the environment variable as a fallback. Okay, so the other volume is the logs volume. We've already seen that, var log gitlab, and then let's take a look at var opt gitlab. Var opt gitlab. Lots of stuff in here. And it says bootstrapped, which might mean that GitLab thinks, okay, I'm already set up. And that's definitely not the case. All your bootstraps are belong to chef. Well, what does happen if we kill this file? Before I kill the whole volume. Var opt gitlab bootstrap, because I'm pretty sure that's a kind of a semaphore file that signals that everything is set up. So with that being done, I'll actually do a stack rm and then a stack install. Oh. It might not have been enough. Probably wasn't. Okay. Then let's not lose more time here and remove the stack and the volumes. And I just realized that setting these things up should probably be a shell script in this repository as well, so someone else would be able to bootstrap this thing. Slayer, you're at the point now where you are both surprised and disgusted by the Windows command line. Well, which is an improvement on say, a decade ago, where you would just have been disgusted. I was quite surprised to hear people praise PowerShell and all that stuff around it. Not that I know anything about that. I haven't touched a Windows system probably in more than 10 years. But yeah, it seems to have been, there seem to have been at least a few improvements now, and that's probably the surprised part on your behalf. But as we already discussed in previous sessions, it isn't a shell, it isn't a Unix shell, it's still a command line built by Microsoft. And you can't do basic operations in a terminal, you know your OS has failed. That's one way to look at that, yeah. And even though I decided to work on a Linux server instead of my own machine, I'm still pretty happy that the Mac terminal is the direct way to the underlying BSD system, which is not only some kind of command line, but actually a Unix shell. Okay, so let's run, or let's create a setup shell script here. I call it setup.sh. basic hash bang dash container volume create minus driver local scope stack. What was the third thing? Oh, just the name. Okay. Gitlab config. Let's go ahead and run container stack install. I could have added the logs command as well. Still no output. Slayer writes, they don't even give you screen width and height paired in the command line, but separately. So you don't have a command that gives you these dimensions in a single information. You have to query them separately. Is it much of a problem? I know that you try to write a command line game, and these things are pretty basic or pretty essential for what you're doing, but is it a big problem that you have to query them separately? That just doesn't look like much of an issue. Hey, Unturned X. Happy to have you on the stream. Welcome. There's no GitHub command at the moment, but I'd be happy to implement one. What did you expect? What information did you want to query? Reinstalling the container platform? Nope. We already have some services running on there, and the platform itself is running fine. I blame the GitLab container here. And at this point, since we are already nearing the end of my stream window, I'm pretty close to calling this a failure at the moment. And I probably have to try to actually run this in Docker Compose first to see if there is a bug or something, which wouldn't surprise me. Maybe it's just the current container image that doesn't work right, and maybe it's not me nor Kontena here at the moment. I pretty much had more success with other services before. You were hoping to see my GitHub profile. Okay, yeah, no problem. I'll send you that right into the chat. It's github.com/gwiz. And I'm not sure if I have actually my Docker stuff. I actually don't have it in my personal repository. And it's also not public on my company organization, I'm afraid. But we should actually think about opening our container stacks repository, because I don't think that's much of a secret. I consider making the repository I'm working on at the moment public. And I'll add this GitHub command. Okay, so that's very strange. I don't get any logs anymore. And to be honest, I don't know where to look now. It's probably one of these things again that I'll keep trying after shutting down the stream, and within 10 minutes I'll find the issue. But at the moment I must admit that I'm out of ideas at the moment. And that's part of the game, I guess. Very, very strange. Let me see how Kontena deals with deleted volumes. Remove has been created. This being used will fail. Deleted and unused volume will remove the underlying Docker volumes. This may actually also remove the backing storage for the volume, which I would very much like in this case, to have everything removed. Let's take another look at the container. It's not nearly as much stuff as before. It's not empty either, so something must have happened. I wonder what this -W does. Oops. Okay, a binary. I guess round one is Gitlab 1, Jochen 0. Okay, so next step will be I'll try to actually run this locally on using Docker Compose to see if it actually works and what happens when it actually works, how the container should look like, how the process landscape should look like, and things like that. And I might be able to glean something from that to be able to see what I'd have to change to get it running on our Docker orchestration platform. Well, okay, so I'm sorry I didn't have anything in terms of results this time. It turns out to be more complex than I anticipated to run Gitlab on Docker, or at least in a Docker container on Kontena, to be precise. Somewhere in there is the issue. And I'll keep looking into this, and I'll be back on Thursday, but I'll still stay around for a few minutes and chat with you. So I'll just simply switch over to my bigger window here and see what Slayerdath is asking. What is a good way to loop through two variables at once in Ruby? What do you mean to loop through two variables? Take the value of the first one, do an action, and then do the same action using the second variable? Yeah, so let's simply switch over to my coding screen again. So the thing I think you are asking is something like that. You have two values, say x is 10 and y is 20, and if you want to loop through these values, you could simply use an array consisting of these two values, and do something like this. Value put as oh, of course, with this %w, I'll make them strings. I didn't want to. Well, that's what I meant. However, I'm still not sure what you mean looping through them. Well, I did loop through them that way. Just not sure if that's what you're looking for. Maybe if you can tell me what the result should look like. All right. Yeah, each is a very neat method. Could simplify this by not using do and end because it's a one-liner, so that would be the proper way you would run this. Using an index is only makes sense if you need the value of the index. Otherwise, an iterator like each is the better way. If you are actually interested in the index because you need to calculate something from the actual position in the array, it might make sense. And I think there is a method each with index or something like that. That does that. I've never used it, to be honest. Ruby each with index. Yep. And that gives you the value with the index itself. So you could just do something like this, each with index value. Index put as value number So that gives you the index, but that only makes sense if you are really interested in the index. Otherwise, it would be very old-fashioned for loop thinking to force Ruby to provide you with an index even though you are really not interested in it. So, yeah, parse it. That's exactly the image I have been using here. Gitlab / Gitlab CE and the latest revision. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I guess it's 5 o'clock here, the weather is brilliant, and going outside and getting some ice cream might be more successful than getting Gitlab running at the moment. So I'll call it for today. I'll keep at this because I really would like to see Gitlab running on our platform here. And I'll keep you posted on my success. I'll probably be back on Thursday with a sequel to this. So if you haven't followed my channel yet, please do so. You'll get a notification and it'll actually help me and help the channel. If there is something you'd like to tell me, simply go to my GitHub URL that has just been posted to the chat, and you can actually create a GitHub issue there with your feedback or question you have or something like that, and I'll deal with your issues there. And for today, thanks for watching, thanks for assisting me in debugging this, and we'll get it sorted another time. Have a great day, take care, cheers.